who just decided to have this moment. I'm hearing that this is his character away from this moment. If you go
Wow.
back and watch the beginning of the film, he literally jumps up and start yelling at the children before he goes back there. And so, people say, "Hey, why are you putting this guy out there?" The young lady stepped in front of him. She was protecting her friend. He was yelling at her friend. She's more of the hero in this story than any.
Mm,
I'll just happen to be there. The young lady who stood in front of this gentleman is the real hero. Dion Harrison, who made that speech, those are the real heroes. The parents who are fighting. There's a young lady named Genesis. She's been attacked so much because she's been standing up against critical race theory. These are kids who are in school. These aren't adults. These are children taking on real issues that I want to make sure, as we say in Breonna Taylor, to say their name.
that's right. The people of San Jacinto are lucky to have you as a representative for them. What I would like to ask you now is this, because you hit nail on the head. It's a blueprint, dear brother. It is a blueprint. And that blueprint is to tell the future problem solvers of America that there is no problem to solve. And that is why they are attempting to eradicate fact and truth in educational standards. What do you see is our obligation as members of the community, leaders, forward-thinking individuals? We see what's happening. What should we do?
This is a time to really get involved. Sitting back, being silent, being quiet, those days is over. We've watched the documentaries. We saw Bloody Sunday. We saw Edmund Pettus.
Yep.
This is our 65. This is, what we always constantly say. If we're not learning from history, we're doomed to repeating it. We know that history has been inaccurate the way we've been taught. And so now what these children are asking for is teach accurate history so we can learn from it. And I'm calling for those, regardless of your race, regardless of your ethnicity, regardless of, your background. This is a moment of action. Run for office, get involved. Don't just sit back. Make sure you allow your voice, as I like to say in Horton Hears a Who. Let them know that we are here. And this is a call. This blank piece of paper, this resolution that literally does nothing, has cost the city of Temecula, the school, over $80,000.
Wow.
$80,000. We're not even, think about that. For a document that can't do anything, to stop a teaching that's not happening, people protesting against a speech of a famous, leader, Frederick Douglass, and to argue that racism doesn't exist, while you're hearing a woman yell these language, "Get out of our country." Like, what country do we have to go through? Where are we supposed to go? That's what it reminds me of, And so, this is really a call of action, and I'm glad that I'm on here to share this message, and hopefully it doesn't die down, because of the 2024 election. This is just a foreshadow of
Yep.
what's the things to come.
That's right. I'm glad that you are on the front lines fighting, dear brother. You have an open opportunity to come here anytime. We appreciate your leadership. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
All right. Remember, take care of yourself, take care of each other, take care of the planet. Remember, the truth is always indisputable.
Hey, hey, welcome into Unbossed. It's Adrienne Lawrence filling in for the great Senator Nina Turner. Thank you so much for joining me today. And also thank you who are already on it, where you are subscribing, sharing the stream, and also sending love in the comments, because we have an amazing show for you today. We're gonna be talking about how the right has been inciting violence in the wake of Monday's mass shooting. Also, Trump has been at it as well too. It's wild out there in these streets, and especially when it comes to the streets of Starbucks. That's right, we're gonna talk about that congressional hearing that went down today. But we're not going to talk about it alone, because I have the great and wonderful Jessica Burbank, TYT contributor, joining me. Jessica, you ready for today?
It's so good to be back in action together, yes.
Excellent, excellent. All right, let's go ahead and get things started as we head back to Nashville in theory, but the reality is that the right is everywhere in terms of demonizing trans folks in the wake of Monday's shooting. Watch this.
Trans ideology claims dominion over nature itself. We can change the identity we were born with, they will tell you with wild-eyed certainty. Christians can never agree with this statement because these are powers they believe God alone possesses. That unwillingness to agree, that failure to acknowledge a trans person's dominion over nature, incites and enrages some in the trans community. People who believe they're God can't stand to be reminded that they're not. So Christianity and transgender orthodoxy are wholly incompatible theologies. They can never be reconciled. They are on a collision course with each other. One side is likely to draw blood before the other side. The trans movement is targeting Christians, including with violence. Most Christian leaders in this country don't want to admit that. Admitting it might force them to take deeply unfashionable positions.
Yep, that's right. That's Fox News's face, Tucker Carlson, who is weaponizing anti-trans rhetoric in the wake of the mass shooting on Monday, which was committed by a trans man. And the thing here is, as we heard in that monologue last night, he basically expressly said that trans people are the natural enemy of Christianity. Absolutely, utterly disgusting, demoralizing, and essentially is inciting a crusade that will enhance chances of danger for the trans community, which is something that they already face. And the thing is that Tucker Carlson was not alone in this brigade. Marjorie Taylor Greene was among the first to take to social media in the wake of learning that this shooter was trans. Here you see this tweet: how much hormones like testosterone and medications for mental illness was the transgender Nashville school shooter taking? Everyone can stop blaming guns now. Don Jr. said this: given the incredible rise of trans non-binary mass shooters in the last few years, by far the largest group committing as a percentage of the population, maybe rather than talking about guns, we should be talking about lunatics pushing their gender affirming bullshit on our kids. Ohio Senator JD Vance: we're still learning about the horrific shooting in Nashville, but if early reports are accurate that a trans shooter targeted a Christian school, there needs to be a lot of soul searching on the extremist left, giving in to these ideas into compassion. It's dangerous. And TPUSA founder Charlie Kirk: instead of banning assault rifles, we should ban gender affirming care for kids. This is fear mongering at its worst, and it is targeting the trans community. It's also inciting violence against them. This community is already incredibly small, less than 2% of the US population, 1.6%, if I recall correctly from a Pew Research study. And according to UCLA School of Law, well, we can see here, transgender people are over 4 times more likely than cis people to experience violent victimization. That includes sexual assault, sexual violence, aggravated or simple assault, and even property crimes. The trans community is under attack in this country. And regardless of what went down on Monday, the reality is that it's guns that are the problem. The right is simply looking to advance their agenda and their war on the trans community by making it seem like these individuals who are part of a vulnerable small group are in some way a threat to our society. And thus he is inciting violence against them by creating this rhetoric. It's absolutely disgusting. Jessica.
Yeah, absolutely disgusting is right. They got mad at us, the Tucker Carlsons and the like, people who are conservative commentators who always jump on us and say, oh my gosh, there's been a mass shootings. I know it's gonna come. They're gonna start talking about gun bans. We always point out when there's a manifesto that is explicitly Nazi ideologies, it's explicitly white supremacist, it's very clear from these folks' online footprints what they believe in, and the vast majority of mass shooters being white men, and they get mad at us and they say, well, you're really stereotyping here. You can't say it's all white men. You can't demonize white men. But one person who was a mass shooter happened to be transgender. And now they have tried to tell everybody, as Tucker Carlson just did, that there's a part of the trans agenda to attack Christians. Let's back up a little bit. It's been white Christian nationalists that have said, trans people, we don't want you to exist in our society. So someone takes an act of violence, I assume, in response to rhetoric like that, and you're gonna say that this is a part of the trans agenda. The trans agenda in the United States is for people to have a full life expectancy if they're transgender, because of the stats that Adrienne just laid out there. So it's disgusting that they're willing to take these steps and spread this misinformation and turn people's fear into violence against a community that is already disproportionately victimized.
Absolutely. They are willing to rile up their base to attack trans individuals who, again, are such a small population and already face considerable amounts of violence. It's completely and totally unnecessary. And the thing is the Republicans are not going to do anything about it because, hey, why would they? They want to continue to fill their coffers from NRA money. And we know that because we continue to see, we only get thoughts and prayers. And even when it comes to House Majority Leader Kevin McCarthy, we kind of just get nothing. Watch.
Walk with me. You talk about new movies. You talk about your life. You talk about what you're doing for Easter. Anything else. So why didn't you have a question about what we have to go to work right now? There's nothing about it.
Well, can you give us your thoughts on Nashville? What happened and what many There's obviously a grieving community there. There's obviously a question.
Okay, let me ask you guys a question.
Yes.
Do you believe what I tell you?
Well,
What did
reporters,
I say on the way out?
We don't believe anyone. I didn't actually hear you on the way out. What did you say on the way out?
You don't listen.
Yeah, that was McCarthy that you could hear on that audio there being confronted in terms of his response with the Nashville shooting that just went down on Monday. And he has nothing to say. He does not want to answer those questions, explicitly saying he wouldn't answer them. That's not much of a leader, the last I checked. And also the individuals out in North Carolina, not so big on leadership, I would also say, as you can see from this headline here. Well, the Republicans there in the state of North Carolina just made it easier to access guns. Yeah, let's go ahead and go to the AP for this story. So Republicans in North Carolina repealed a state requirement that purchasers of pistols obtain a permit from a sheriff. The enacted bill will also allow guns on some school properties where religious services are held. The Republican-controlled North Carolina legislature successfully overrode a veto by the Democratic Governor Roy Cooper. Yes, that tells us a lot about what's going on in terms of the right who have a position of power in certain states and what they plan to do, which is increase the presence of guns. Jessica.
I'm here in North Carolina now, and my family has guns. I use guns. This law doesn't make any sense, and it's so common that they freak out and say, oh my gosh, they're gonna wanna ban guns. There's just been a shooting. We better pass some legislation and be preventative here and make it a little bit easier to get a pistol. First of all, no one has proposed, there are very few people, no one's proposed legislation to do a full ban on pistols in the state of North Carolina. The idea that you need to take away this very basic preventative policy that is popular among people in the United States, that if you wanna get a gun, just prove you know how to use it. It makes me scared as a gun owner that they're making it easier and that people who have never shot a gun can just go and get a gun. This makes matters far worse, and it just goes to show that these folks who say, you know what, the proliferation of arms in the United States, the amount of guns that we have is not the problem, that's not why we have all of these school shootings. So what is, and why aren't you legislating around that? It doesn't make any sense whatsoever, and honestly, as a gun owner, this makes me feel worse about our rights to bear arms in the United States.
Absolutely, and it is very terrifying that they singled out that you can bring guns in certain places where they are having religious services. Come on now, it's not just necessarily in places where they have Christian houses, but also when you think about mosques, when you think about synagogues, places that generally have not had the presence of weapons because the individuals who brought them there brought them to harm the individuals there. Why they would particularly single out houses of worship or places of worship is extremely terrifying, but it shows us that if this rhetoric that Carlson and the rest of them are pushing in terms of this thought that the trans community is targeting Christianity and is the antithesis to the Christian Judeo life, then that's what's going on here in terms of the thought that, well, they might go ahead and come after our churches, which is nothing but propaganda. And somebody who loves their propaganda definitely would be Donald Trump. As he's facing indictment in his hush money case, well, the former president is calling for chaos and violence, and he's doing it at every turn. Most recently with this retruth here that he had posted on his social media platform, Truth Social. This post that he is promoting, it says, Democrats want to indict and arrest President Trump. They want a war, let's give it to them. Yeah, that post was written by far-right columnist Wayne Allen Root. And that message is coming across loud and clear, the thought that individuals want war when they simply want justice and for there to be one justice system. Well, that wasn't the end of it. Trump has been publicly lashing out at Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg since at least, mid-March? Here's another recent post from the former president. He said this, page 2, now illegal leaks from a corrupt and highly political Manhattan district attorney's office, which has allowed new records to be set in violent crime and whose leader is funded by George Soros, indicate that with no crime being able to be proven and based on an old and fully debunked by numerous other prosecutors fairy tale and far away leading Republican candidate and former president of the United States of America will be arrested on Tuesday of next week. Protests take our nation back. Yeah, that's when he pushed that narrative and thought that there would be an arrest. And of course, he ended up raising $1.5 million in funds, that avalanche of funding that he got because he was pushing this whole theory that he would be arrested, which never came to pass. And of course, 5 days after he put that out there, well, Trump posted a photo of himself holding a baseball bat next to a picture of DA Bragg. Yeah. And at the bottom there, it has this unfounded caption that just 10% of Manhattan residents voted for anti-Trump DA in 2021. If he is not inciting violence against DA Bragg and his team, I really don't know what is going on here. But I think that my understanding is accurate. And of course, when asked about all of these comments that he's making directed toward Bragg, well, Trump had this to say.
You talked about death and destruction, and then the baseball bat picture next to Alvin Bragg, and you did take that down.
And the story was put up. I put up a story. We didn't see pictures. We put up a story that was very exculpatory, very good story from the standpoint of what we're talking about. And they put up a picture of me, and you know where I was holding the baseball bat? It was at the White House. Make America, Buy America, because they did a lot of Buy America things. And this is a company that makes baseball bats. Then they put next to that picture, a picture of Alvin Bragg. I didn't do it, they did it. I guess the people that do the paper or somebody put pictures together.
Wow, he really likes to play dumb. That was some great deflection there as opposed to address the issue. Go off talking about a manufacturer of a baseball bat and then someone else did it. Get out of here with that. Jessica, am I missing this?
Yeah, I mean, if he didn't like the story or didn't like the picture attached to the story, he didn't have to retruth the picture. I think that's the proper terminology for Truth Social. But here we have someone running for president, the former president, who is saying if they want a war, let's give it to them. Within a week of him saying, I don't want World War III. I'm the only candidate promising no World War III. But he's promising a Civil War 2.0. Do we see how this doesn't make sense whatsoever? I love America so much. Let's tear it down with a civil war because the Justice Department might finally get me for some crimes that I have admitted to publicly. These attorneys have this case pretty much in the bag because what he said about Stormy Daniels and how he said this is extortion. But it's crazy what he's done, saying, I'm against World War III, but I'm okay with the Civil War. It's like when you're driving with your mom and you pass by McDonald's and you're like, Mom, can we please go to McDonald's? And she's like, no, you don't have McDonald's money. We have food at home. Donald Trump straight up said, do you have war money? No? All right, well, let's make war at home. We've got some AK-47s in the cabinets. We'll scrounge something up. It's ridiculous that this is the former president and someone running for office. And he's like, maybe we'll do a civil war. Makes no sense to me.
Yeah, and most of his rhetoric does not make sense. We just know it incites violence. And of course, he loves to continue to wage these attacks, which he is also finding comfort in attacking his potential competition for that 2024 GOP presidential primary. That's Ron DeSantis. Yeah, watch this.
What happened with Ron is the following. He came to see me. He was getting killed. He was being crushed. Adam Putnam, it was over. He was beating Ron by 30 points or something. It was over. Ron came to see me, tears in his eyes. He said, I need you to do me a big favor. First he asked for the meeting, then he asked me for the favor. I said, what's the favor? Would you endorse me?
Yes, the Ron tears in his eyes talk. I think we've heard this a lot over the last few days, but of course it doesn't stop there for Donald Trump.
Florida did great long before DeSantis came along, got my coveted endorsement, which shot him up in the polls and then won the election, won the primary, then he won the election with my help. We did rallies for him, we did everything for him. I like people that are loyal. When you help somebody, you expect that there'll be a certain amount of dignity and loyalty. We didn't get that from Ron, but that's okay because we're gonna beat him and we're gonna beat him very badly. We're gonna win the presidency. We're gonna make America great again.
It's rather comical how Trump loves to talk about loyalty, yet he is the most disloyal person I think I've ever encountered. Oh my God, but you know what? It seems like the MAGA community may be more loyal to him because these jabs toward DeSantis, they seem to be pretty profitable for old Donnie. That's according at least to one new poll, this per The Guardian. On Monday, a new survey from the Center for American Political Studies at Harvard and the Harris poll gave the former president a 26-point national lead over the Florida governor by 50% to 24%, a 4-point gain since February. Oof, that seems like there might be something there, but of course, when he's out here fiending that he's going to be indicted and arrested, I'm sure a lot of people may sympathize with him, but I would hope that people would sympathize more with common sense, but that's clearly not the case. Jessica, any thoughts?
Donald Trump's face looks like an old leather shoe these days. It's really alarming to watch this man speak and comprehend what he's saying without getting so distracted by that. But the battle between DeSantis or DeSanctimonious and Trump is such a fascinating one because here you have Donald Trump saying, I made this guy who he is, right? There he is with his leather shoe face. He's taking credit for DeSantis's political career, but everybody that likes Donald Trump has some sympathy for Ron DeSantis. We see in the rallies when Donald Trump insults DeSantis, the crowd's pretty quiet. They're not cheering him on. And so it goes to show that when Trump is talking about loyalty to his political allies, that means unless it's inconvenient for my personal political career, where I grew up, that's not how loyalty works. Loyalty goes both ways. So it's just fascinating watching these two tear each other down to the detriment of their political movement.
Oh, absolutely. And it's really uncomfortable because we know that so many members of the Republican Party are going to be in that awkward position when they ultimately go for DeSantis and they are now at the ire of Donald Trump. So let the mudslinging continue as long as it, to some extent, would hopefully splits the vote in some way. I'm down for it. I'm also down to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
Welcome to Indisputable. I'm your host, Dr. Rashad Richard. We got a lot happening today. But what do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable.
Rashad, great to be here. Congratulations on the new show. And I gotta let everybody know that Rashad and I go way back.
Here's the pattern that we see in all of these Karen stories. They think they own stuff they do not own. Now, where does that come from? I don't know, maybe slavery. Maybe they think they should still own black people.
This is what happens when Karens weaponize the police.
When you're used to privilege, equality,
seems like oppression.
It hits you in a certain way when someone is holding you against your will, treating you like you're a criminal and you're an innocent person. This is something that Black people face no matter where they are.
A stronger Black economy lends itself to a stronger, greater economy. Don't think it's exclusive of you, it's inclusive of you.
What's your beef with critical race theory?
It adds more fuel to the fire of the racist tendencies that we already have.
We have a generation of problem solvers that can remedy the problem if they are properly taught what the problem is.
You know who created redlining in this country? It was the white liberal.
I don't give a damn who created it. If it's a racist policy, Shelley, here's what I don't know. I don't know. See, there you go filibustering, brother. You're scared of this truth, but you're gonna get it, though.
Climate is changing fundamentally, extremely, and non-linearly. It's becoming worse now. It's not when the levees burst that is the problem. It's in the anticipation of that.
So I hope every human being is safe. And by human beings, I do not include multinational corporations, especially the ones that started climate change in the first place.
What we're currently doing right now in cutting emissions is clearly not enough. There will be ramifications to what Trump is doing. I don't want people to suffer, but I feel like there's gonna be a lot of suffering because we have an imbecile as our leader.
All right, welcome back. Adrienne Lawrence filling in for the great Nina Turner. Yes, and so excited to have you all for this unbossed conversation. And I need you to do me a solid. If you haven't already, please subscribe now to TYT's weekday morning newsletter. I get it. It's called the Progress Report, and it's fantastic. Every morning, we're going to give you the best progressive news, also analysis, reporting. It'll be broken down in a way that's going to give you so much incredible knowledge to go forth and do greatness. You can go ahead and scan the QR code, or go to tyt.com/newsletter to sign up. Also, do not hesitate to check out the watch list. That's right, that's my buddy JR Jackson, comes after Unbossed, and you need to share in his takes because he's got some good ones. Enjoy watching news, politics, culture, current events, sports, everything live daily, 5 Eastern, 2 Pacific. You can watch that at youtube.com/watchlist. And of course, gotta peep the podcast. That's right, for Unbossed Live. You can go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast, download it, and also hit that rating of 5 stars. We'd really appreciate it. As far as the TYT members out there, I got to give you love. Wolf Dragon Donna says there are not enough swear words to describe Tucker Carlson. There aren't, but my God, I will use a few, and a lot of them will have 4 letters. Mo Fury says, so a bag of tangerines and a talking thumb are fighting for the GOP nomination. We are living in a comic book. Yeah, and it's about to turn into a real horror film if either of them end up winning. But it's a winner out there on Twitch. That's San Diego J, sending love to me, you, Adrienne, and Jessica. Let's get them. That's right. I like that. I like it. Let's stay pumped. Also for that YouTube super chat, you don't like my music says 2 absolute truth tellers. Love it. Absolutely love it and love you. Something I don't love, though, is the GOP's war on wokeness, which popped off yesterday. And it seems that Congressman Paul Gosar, well, he decided to wage a war on some conspiracy theory. It's pretty interesting. Check this out.
Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense, issued, quote, a stand down of the entire military in 2021 because he falsely believed the military is systematically racist. What an insult to our brave men and women. General Milley, instead of fulfilling his constitutional duty to serve Donald Trump, the duly elected president at the time, representing the voice of the American people, conspired with both Nancy Pelosi and foreign adversary, the CCP, on separate occasions to hatch plans to overthrow the sitting president of the United States. What insurrection, you say? The point of all these actions is clear.
Cleanse the military of conservatives.
Wow, that is cute. I guess the gentleman from Arizona believes that General Milley, Nancy Pelosi, and China conspired to take down Donald Trump. Yeah, I'm sure. That's all that happened to go down during a congressional hearing on, what was it? Not on conspiracy theories, but the historic decline in military recruitment. Yeah, so the GOP wants to blame wokeness for that. But before we get to the likely cause, let's look at what diversity in the US Armed Forces actually looks like, courtesy of Representative Maxwell Frost.
I even heard somebody bring up, one of the witnesses, an unspoken rule on pressures of promotions can be based on quotas or DEI or et cetera. I think it's important to know 76% of active duty officers in the US military right now are white. And so I highly doubt that there's an unspoken pressure that is pushing people to promote based on DEI, race, or et cetera. Our military has about 1.3 million active personnel. However, women recruits continue to climb. Men still make up 82% of our military. I think it's important to know that recent surveys have found that an estimate 21% of women in the military and about 4% of men have experienced unwanted sexual contact in the prior year.
Yeah, as an expert on workplace sexual harassment who has done the research, I can definitely tell you that you're gonna get a lot more harassholes in environments where they are homogenous and people come through who are a little bit different. And when it comes to different in the military, I can tell you one thing that's not different, it's cis-het white men. As you can see from this chart here, and as Maxwell Frost said, yeah, that's right. Racially, white people dominate. It comes to the military. Yet I would like to think every group can fight no matter what color they are or gender. But still, the military is pushing this idea that wokeness is the reason why that there's been a decline in military recruitment. I doubt that is the case. But as we look at this headline here per military.com, it definitely seems they are still doubling down on their woke criticism after Army says safety's top recruiting is the challenge. That's right. Young people do not necessarily want to get out there and risk their lives, especially if they're not necessarily going to get paid a lot, which we'll discuss in a moment. There is no validity so far in all to this wokeness agenda. Just ask Lieutenant General David Barno, who testified yesterday.
Aware of any studies that actually have any factual data that support that assertion? I also know that at least two service chiefs, the Commandant of the Marine Corps, General Berger, and the Chief Staff of the Air Force, General C.Q. Brown, have both said that wokeism is not, there's no such thing as not affecting military readiness. They see no evidence that this is a problem inside their two services. And I think that applies in the recruiting domain as well. But no, in terms of actual evidence, I've not seen that.
No one's seen any evidence. But what we definitely have seen evidence of is the fact that people can't, make ends meet when they work for the military? Yeah, Congressman Jamie Raskin put the truth out there. It all boils down to money.
Potential recruits are not afraid of going woke, they're afraid of going broke. Pay and benefits are so low that the RAND Corporation estimates that more than a quarter, 26% of our military service members are food insecure, and 14% actually use food assistance programs like food banks to meet their family needs.
Yeah. The fact is that people are struggling. They do not want to put their lives on the line, potentially face some physical harm, also be subjected to sexual harassment, mistreatment because they're different, all because they're going to take home a few coins, not even enough so that they can live and support their families. So yeah, it's not looking good for the military. Jessica.
I have so many thoughts on this. I cannot believe there is a congressional hearing on the decline in US military recruitment numbers, and sitting members of Congress are saying that that is because of wokeness. There were people in the streets protesting the war in Iraq. There were people in the streets protesting the Vietnam War, and Black Americans were sent to fight in the Vietnam War despite being denied their rights at home. The majority of the people in the United States did not support the US intervening in the war in Nicaragua, and still, are members of Congress, after voting unanimously, promising that they would not, the US foreign policy establishment did. $886.3 billion is the defense budget for 2024. and they call it defense spending, but we know very well that America is on the offensive. $886.3 billion, when most Americans, 64%, are living paycheck to paycheck. So when you wage unjust wars with a high cost both in dollars and human lives, and you don't take care of veterans when they get home, if they make it home, and you don't pay them fair wages, you can't be surprised when people don't want to fight on your side. In the words of George W. Bush himself, fool me once, fool me, you can't get fooled again. I don't think wokeness is what the demise of the US military can be accredited to. The US military caused its own demise when you have elites using us as pawns in this game of international domination and capital accumulation. They've orchestrated their own demise. And so when we really think about all of this, fear is a manipulation tool with a limited lifespan, and it's about reached its expiration date. And if people opening their eyes to all of that means that we are woke, okay, stay asleep, but sleep in the bed that you've made.
Absolutely. And I really wish that they would maybe do a little bit more when it comes to budget cuts, because as you noted, in terms of our military budget, what $800 billion, something of that measure, that's incredibly unnecessary in terms of spending that we could be allocating for other things. But of course, when it comes to spending, we get to see what the GOP wants to do. And House Leader, well, Kevin McCarthy, he doesn't have anything to say that we really want to believe. Is that right?
So the one thing I will tell you as Republicans, we will always protect Medicare and Social Security. We will protect that for the next generation going forward. But we are going to scrutinize every single dollar spent. It's the hardworking taxpayer that actually pays it, and we want to make sure it's spent wisely and not the way the Democrats have spent it.
That's completely not plausible coming off of his lips. As much as he wants to say that the GOP won't go after Social Security in the debt limit battle, well, there are other vital programs that definitely are not safe. The New York Times headline here makes that clear. It says House GOP prepares to slash federal programs in coming budget showdown. That's right, a breakdown of what the GOP plans to target looks like this. The outline includes a 45% cut to foreign aid, adding work requirements for food stamps and Medicaid beneficiaries, a 43% cut to housing programs, including phasing out the Section 8 program that pays a portion of monthly rent costs for low-income people, cutting the FBI's counterintelligence budget by nearly half, and eliminating Obamacare expansions to Medicaid to save tens of billions of dollars. Interesting, I don't see anything about taxing the wealthy there. It seems that they're trimming everything back on things that would help those who are quite marginalized in our society. But of course, now McCarthy says he's ready to reignite the flame here. That's right, tweeting at President Biden. Mr. President, I'm incredibly concerned you are putting an already fragile economy in jeopardy by insisting upon your extreme position on the debt limit. It's time to drop partisanship, roll up our sleeves, and find common ground on this urgent challenge. My God, the only thing common is that they both get a paycheck from the federal government. But critics out there in Congress, they're definitely quick to get ahead of McCarthy's attempts here. Really, Common Dreams has the truth here in their headline, saying this scam is a non-starter. Dems blast McCarthy's latest call for painful cuts. Let's look at that blast. As President Biden has demanded a debt ceiling increase without any accompanying spending cuts, in response to McCarthy's letter, Biden pushed House Republicans to release a detailed budget plan, but stressed that spending talks must be separate from prompt action on Congress's basic obligations to pay the nation's bills and avoid economic catastrophe. In a Tuesday appearance on CNBC, McCarthy said he is prepared to recommend $4 trillion in total spending cuts, but he didn't provide specifics on which programs would be cut and by how much, drawing mockery from Democratic lawmakers. Yeah, and one of those lawmakers was Senator Chuck Schumer. Take a look at his tweet. This is from Huffington Post senior politics reporter Iger Bobbick, saying Schumer on McCarthy's demands. If he comes to the president's office with no specific plan, no specific details about what the Republicans want to cut, what are they going to talk about? The weather? Yeah, that'll be interesting because we know the weather is definitely a little bit more reliable, it seems, these days in the GOP. They are not looking to ensure that the least among us are supported by the system. They're not looking to trim those who could definitely sustain a trim in terms of maybe paying a bit more in taxes. Rather, we the people are gonna be the ones to suffer, the people who actually work. And it is clear, taking away opportunity for people to get benefits, Section 8 housing funding, these things are essential that come to individuals' daily lives and ability to take care of themselves. But the GOP really wants to sweep the leg here still. Jessica.
I'm just not a fan. Anytime a member of Congress acts like Medicare, Medicaid, the things that our public dollars go to pay for, when they act like those aren't things we worked for, and they instead treat them like they're gifts from the US government to you. That's not how any of this works. They're pretending that the spending is so limited and so constrained that we have to cut back on Medicare and Medicaid when our economy is far more productive than it was when parents, children were doing better than them economically. They could work their way through college, they could afford a home. That economy has been gutted because while we've been far more productive, our wages haven't kept up with this productivity. And even recently, during the pandemic, 53% of the money made off of price increases was all profit. So if workers are being more productive and making things that earn their bosses more money, we have worked for things that we are not getting. That money is all going into the pockets of billionaires, of CEOs, of the owner donors that pay people like Kevin McCarthy to say things precisely like this, that there's not enough money to go around. Well, where's the money going? Guess what? It's in the hands of the people who are paying him to say exactly that. And it's things that we've worked for. When you go to work every single day in your 9 to 5 and you put in 8 hours, you deserve Medicare and Medicaid. We can all pool our resources together and very easily afford these things. But when they're suppressing us and keeping our wages so low and increasing prices so that we have to give more of those hard-earned wages to them, they're just hoarding the money at this point and essentially keeping us ransom and working for them, holding us ransom rather. And so it's disgusting to hear them talk about things that we've worked for as if it's a gift from Kevin McCarthy.
Absolutely. It's so funny because it reminds me of exactly how our nation was founded, the thought that only white wealthy men who owned property got a say. So their goal was, well, let's keep the people as uneducated as possible. Let's keep them as poor as possible and reliant upon us so that they have to labor and we are the ones in control. And it seems very much the case that that whole mantra is still very much alive and well and part of the legacy that is America in addition to its future. But as far as the future goes, we will see you back after this break.
Welcome to Indisputable. I'm your host, Dr. Rashad Richard. We got a lot happening today. But what do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable.
Rashad, great to be here. Congratulations on the new show. And I gotta let everybody know that Rashad and I go way back.
Here's the pattern that we see in all of these Karen stories. They think they own stuff they do not own. Now, where does that come from? I don't know, maybe slavery. Maybe they think they should still own black people.
This is what happens when Karens weaponize the police.
When you're used to privilege, equality seems like oppression.
It hits you in a certain way when someone is holding you against your will, treating you like you're a criminal and you're an innocent person. This is something that black people face no matter where they are.
A stronger black economy lends itself to a stronger, greater economy. Don't think it's exclusive of you, it's inclusive of you.
What's your beef with critical race theory?
It adds more fuel to the fire of the racist tendencies that we already have.
We have a generation of problem solvers that can remedy the problem if they are properly taught what the problem is.
You know who created redlining in this country? It was the white liberal.
I don't give a damn who created it. If it's a racist policy, Shelley, here's what I don't know. I don't know. See, there you go filibustering, brother. You're scared of this truth, but you're gonna get it though.
Climate is changing fundamentally, extremely, and non-linearly. It's becoming worse now. It's not when the levees burst that is the problem. It's in the anticipation of that.
So I hope every human being is safe. And by human beings, I do not include multinational corporations, especially the ones that started climate change in the first place.
What we're currently doing right now in cutting emissions is clearly not enough. There will be ramifications to what Trump is doing. I don't want people to suffer, but I feel like there's going to be a lot of suffering because we have an imbecile as our leader.
It's Unbossed, and it's Adrienne Lawrence, and I'm glad to be back, filling in for Senator Nina Turner. And Mountain Dragon says, miss you, Senator Turner, but so glad to have the law in the Burbank to get us through the day. All the love to you too, and our TYT fam. Thank you so much. We really appreciate the love. And Twitch, well, Chipmunk says, people are figuring out that our military means bullying the rest of the world into submission, and they don't want a part of it. Yeah, it seems to be right. And also YouTube, Meredith says, I question Paul Gosar's mental capacity. He's clearly incapacitated. He is evil and he is missing a few cards short of a full deck. I don't know, but I know it's a problem, and this man is very much a part of it. But you know what's not necessarily going to be as much a part of the problem, at least in California, is oil companies. That's right, California's going after those greedy oil manufacturers. Check this out.
Fossil fuel obsolescence is on the horizon. They know that, and they will make sure.
Celebrated the passage of this law, saying despite the industry spending millions on lobbying, California is now one step closer to protecting working Californians from the oil industry's greed, whether it's price gouging at the pump or drilling in people's backyard. Big oil's days of harming our health and our pocketbooks must end. Now, as a reminder here, check out this chart. You know, these big oil companies really smashed the profit records in 2022. That's right, when a lot of us were struggling with the price of eggs, all sorts of things were going through the roof, they were cashing in. They are making more money than before than ever. And so capping that, or at least letting them know there are gonna be penalties, is incredibly important. And this is a great step for California, and hopefully this is the kind of legislation that'll pick up more traction across the nation. Of course, I will go ahead and kind of go out there on a limb and say I'd like to see it go further. I'd like for there not to be set fines, but I would love for the fines to be based on a percentage of whatever your revenue is. That's how I would love to see speeding tickets, how I'd love to see any kind of these fines that Facebook and these other big companies get. Because otherwise it's just a drop in the bucket when they are reaping in profits in the billions, damn near trillions. So having a $500,000 to be the max fine isn't really that burdensome for them. Let's actually, hit them where it hurts. At least those are my thoughts. Jessica, what do you think?
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. I mean, they can afford to pay these fines when they're literally profiting in the billions. So yeah, it's a slap on the wrist, but it's better than nothing at all, of course. The thing about this is they're raising prices just because they can. They're not raising prices because there's some additional costs. It's become more expensive for oil. They're certainly not raising prices because they're reinvesting a proportion of their profits into, I don't know, what needs to change about the energy industry. They're not investing in renewable energies. You are an energy company, and still, you would rather keep your costs low, keep extracting oil, and just if you feel like raising prices, you're gonna raise prices because you know what, the profits weren't as high when people were staying at home and weren't driving because we had that global pandemic. So let's make up for it by just hiking them. Let's line the pockets of our shareholders. I mean, seriously, this should be criminal because there are people who are making the really hard decision to cut back on spending on groceries, to cut back on spending on basic necessities because of the amount of money they were paying on energy and fuel, especially in California where it was extremely high. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done here. Hopefully they will not circumvent this fine and try and pass it off onto the consumer or what have you. We definitely need a windfall profits tax to address all of the money they've already made, that's in their pockets. If you're at a poker game and someone's been cheating, you don't just say, hey, don't do that anymore, we'll punish you. You say, well, you took a lot of our money in an unfair way, we've got to set things right. So I would really like to see them retroactively tax the profits that they've made off of price gouging during the pandemic. Hopefully we'll see it go farther, but this is good news.
Oh, wow. When you brought up someone cheating at the poker game, I was thinking that, you break their kneecaps. That's how you show them not to do it again. But if you just want to take their money back, that's fine too. But hey, those are kind of just the way I go about it in terms of handling people who act up. And of course, Congress does it very differently. And they did it differently today before Senator Bernie Sanders, who had a few words for the Starbucks executive, now former CEO, Howard Schultz.
Campaign has been led by Howard Schultz, the multi-billionaire founder and director of Starbucks, who is with us this morning only under the threat of subpoena. There have been over 500 unfair labor practice charges lodged against the company, and judges have found that Starbucks broke the law 130 times across 6 states since workers began organizing in the fall of 2021.
Yeah, that's right. That was a hearing for the history books. Schultz is kind of known as an infamous union buster, and he had just resigned right before testifying before Congress. On Wednesday, he did so, as Bernie noted, under the threat of subpoena, sitting down before the Senate to address allegations that Starbucks had been breaking labor laws, not necessarily breaking kneecaps, though. And of course, Schultz, well, he was fresh off his 3rd stint as Starbucks CEO, and he repeatedly denied wrongdoing. Here's a reminder of what the antics are. So employees at nearly 300 coffee shops have now voted to join Starbucks Workers United. About 3% of the chain's company-owned locations in the US Starbucks has shuttered some unionized stores and fired some workers involved in organizing, citing misconduct. Administrative law judges have found Starbucks violated labor laws in at least 8 of those cases so far, which the company is appealing. Some rulings have ordered Starbucks to reinstate fired workers and issue them back pay. One said Starbucks engaged in egregious and widespread misconduct, demonstrating a general disregard for the employees. Yes, that's right, because again, the penalties are not very steep, yet if there were fines in place that hit the companies at a percentage of their revenue, my God, I'm sure they would lay off union workers and maybe even just treat them a little bit better. Now, of course, Mitt Romney tried to throw an alley-oop during the hearing to former Starbucks CEO Howard Schultz, really about the benefits in non-unionized stores, saying that they were better than in unionized stores, and it did not go well.
Do the non-union store employees get paid less than the union store employees?
The starting wage has been the same. The only difference is the benefits that we created in May. And my understanding under the law is that we were not allowed to provide those benefits to people who are organizing to join a union.
So in fact, the non-union stores are actually a little better total package than the union stores.
In my 4 years at the company, I've never had a problem qualifying for benefits until now suddenly. I actually just was taken off of Starbucks benefit policies because I have not been scheduled the appropriate hours or anywhere close to my availability for the better part of an hour requirement per week. It's 20 hours per week. The threshold was lowered due to COVID. However, that has now since, I believe, been removed. Because of that, my hours were cut.
Yeah, I think that would be more aligned to truth and less so what Schultz is saying. Again, it's incredibly disheartening that you can have these companies raking in billions of dollars, and yet their employees simply want to gather together so that they can have better control over their own economic independence and the conditions within which they work. And yet these companies will invest millions of dollars to stop them, as opposed to just treating them decently. I don't get it, but then again, it's very much a hallmark of our capitalistic society. Jessica.
Absolutely. Howard Schultz got that law so backwards in his application or regurgitation of it. Basically, if you're organizing a union and you're a group of workers, It's a tactic for your boss to say, no, let's give you some more benefits. Let's pay, for some of your college. Let's raise your wages a little bit. What do you want changed about your schedule? To entice them to not join the union because they want to continue exerting power over them and exploiting their labor. And so what Howard Schultz mentions, well, I didn't think I could give the union employees the benefits because of this law. But what he has done is said, well, there's a new enticement for you to not work at a store with the union. They get more benefits. He literally did the thing that's illegal, saying, I was trying not to do the illegal thing. It's absolutely ridiculous. But should a cup of coffee be $8 like it is at Starbucks? It's insane what the prices are, and it also comes with the moral cost of these baristas not being able to pay rent, of them working at stores that are understaffed, of their managers telling them that, some customers might come in without PPE even before the vaccines came out. And these folks were on the front lines risking getting COVID at the beginning of the pandemic for what? For people to have coffee, but that was okay for people like Howard Schultz who are profiting off of this. People were being denied their basic rights to organize a union and live with dignity. And let's keep in mind that being a barista isn't a side job for folks. It's not something that just young people do or people do in addition to their main job. This is people's livelihood. This is how people pay their bills and pay their rent and take care of their families. And they deserve to be paid a living wage, especially when we see what Starbucks profits are.
Absolutely. And when we see the profits, it does not make sense when these billion-dollar companies aren't treating their employees well, or maybe even they're just laying them off. And that's what's happening at Disney right now. As we know, they are dropping some 7,000 employees. That's right. CEO Bob Iger dropped this memo to his team, I believe last week. Dear fellow employees, as I shared with you in February, we have made the difficult decision to reduce our overall workforce by approximately 7,000 jobs as part of a strategic realignment of the company, including important cost-saving measures necessary for creating a more effective, coordinated, and streamlined approach to our business over the past few months. Senior leaders have been working closely with HR to assess their operational needs, and I will give you an update on those efforts. Well, those updates are coming this week. As we know, a first round began and it impacted managers notifying employees. A second round that's going to be larger is going to take place in April. That's what Iger said. And several thousand staffers will be let go then. And then a third round will occur before the beginning of summer. Eliminating an estimated 7,000 jobs. And of course, this puts a dent to some extent in Disney's workforce. They could basically be cutting about 3% of the workforce. And right now, Disney, they have about 220,000 employees. And a lot of them, they do not necessarily make a lot of money. We know that Disney employees on average earn about $23.61. That is not necessarily enough to have a living wage, really depending on where you live. But we also know that Bob Iger has a base salary of $1 million, and I'm sure there are plenty of benefits that go along with that. And that Disney made about $84 billion last year. Jessica, any words on this?
I think it's fascinating. I would love to know which jobs specifically were cut. What were those people doing? Because as we see the rise of AI and computing power, we've had some hysteria around, robots are going to take your job. A robot is something that mechanically does something that human beings might usually do when you talk about replacement. But when we talk about AI, that can replace people's jobs as well. And the wording of this announcement, it doesn't seem like they're saying, it's just a temporary thing, the economy's not so good. It seems like they're making some pretty permanent changes, actually. And so that tells me that they found a way to substitute this labor, or they have a reason not to need this labor anymore. And so if this were something you told, economists in the 70s or the 60s, people are losing their jobs because we have the rise of AI, it'd be like, great. So computers are doing work that we used to do. Humans must have so much more leisure time than they did before if computers can work for us. But instead, this is going to be 7,000 people wondering how they're going to pay the bills, wondering how they're going to get on unemployment insurance or find other work, when really we should be in a position where it's like, great, AIs and computers can work for us and we can be more productive and do less work as a people and have a higher quality of life. Unfortunately, the way our economy is set up, that's not what's happening, but we need to make the changes so that that can happen.
Absolutely. And the interesting thing, as you've noted in terms of why this is happening. As I understand that there's a billionaire activist investor named Nelson Peltz who was making a play for a board seat at Disney, and he did not back down until Iger agreed to cut these costs by cutting these jobs and trimming down the company. That just tells you we are pawn in the billionaires game. But right now we are out of time. I really want to thank you for joining us, Jessica. And can you please tell the viewers where they can find you?
Yes, all over social media, Substack, Burbank, YouTube now, Burbank as well, counter programming. So see you there.
All right, fantastic. And I am Adrienne Lawrence, filling in for Nina Turner. You can catch me on Twitter at Adrienne Law, on Instagram at Adrienne Lawrence, and you can check out my segment Overruled on Rebel Headquarters, which is on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks so much and enjoy your day.